What if I told you that the biggest threat to your family's inheritance wasn't the IRS, but your own zip code? It sounds wild, but a simple invisible line on a map could be the one thing that stands between your kids inheriting your life's work or getting a tax bill that could leave them broke. Now, most people hear death tax and immediately think of the federal estate tax, but let's be real, with the exemption for 2025 at a whopping $13.99 million per person, it affects a tiny fraction of the wealthiest families. In fact, thanks to the One Big Beautiful Bill Act passed in July 2025, that federal exemption is set to jump to an incredible $15 million in 2026, putting it even further out of reach for most Americans. The real danger, the one that quietly bleeds legacies dry, isn't coming from Washington, D.C. It's coming from your state capital. We're talking about the hidden world of state estate and inheritance taxes, the taxes that can ambush a family when they are most vulnerable. Today, we're naming names and exposing the states where these taxes hit the hardest. Are you living in one of them? Stick around, because the answer could literally save your family a fortune. Before we dive in, take a second to hit like and subscribe, because the strategies we're about to reveal could protect everything you've worked for. Before we jump into the list, you need to understand the two types of taxes we're dealing with, because they are not the same thing. First up is the state estate tax. Think of this as a tax on the entire value of your stuff when you die. Your house, your 401k, your investments, your business, all of it. If the total value, your estate, is over a certain limit, the state takes a slice right off the top before your heirs see a dime. It's a tax paid by the estate itself. As of 2025, 12 states and the District of Columbia have one. Second, we have the state inheritance tax, and this one can be even more of a gut punch. This tax isn't on the estate's total value. Instead, it's a bill sent directly to the person receiving the inheritance. The amount they pay depends on their relationship to you. A spouse or child might pay zero, but a niece, a cousin, or your lifelong best friend could get slapped with a massive tax bill just for the privilege of receiving your gift. Only 5 states still have this kind of tax, but where they do, it's brutal. And the absolute worst place to be? That's the one state that has the nerve to hit you with both. We'll get to that train wreck in a minute. The main thing to remember is this. For most families, the federal government isn't the bogeyman. The real threat to your legacy could be living right in your own state. All right, let's get to it. We're counting down the absolute worst states to die in if you want to leave a financial legacy to the people you love. Number 5, Rhode Island. Kicking off our list at number 5 is the Ocean State. Rhode Island has an estate tax with a painfully low exemption. For 2025, if your estate is worth more than about $1.8 million, your family is cutting a check to the government. Now, $1.8 million might sound like a lot, but an estate isn't just cash. It's your home, maybe a vacation spot, your retirement accounts, life insurance. It adds up fast. A family home and a healthy 401k can easily push you over that line. Let's say your estate is worth $2.5 million in Rhode Island. The first $1.8 million is safe, but the other $700,000 gets taxed at rates up to 16%. That's a tax bill of over $110,000 your heirs have to pay, often forcing them to sell precious assets like the family home just to cover it. What makes Rhode Island extra tough is that it lacks portability, meaning a surviving spouse can't use their deceased spouse's unused exemption. Once it's gone, it's gone. Number 4, Kentucky. Next up is Kentucky, our first state with an inheritance tax. Kentucky doesn't care about the total value of your estate. It taxes what each person receives. The law splits heirs into classes. Class A heirs, that's your spouse, kids, grandkids, parents, and siblings, are totally exempt. Leave everything to your daughter, and she pays 0 state inheritance tax. So why is Kentucky on this list? Because of what happens when you leave money to anyone else. Class B heirs, like nieces and nephews, get a tiny $1,000 exemption before getting hit with tax rates up to 16%. Class C heirs, cousins, friends, anyone not related, get a measly $500 exemption before the same rates kick in. Imagine you're single with no kids and you've saved up $300,000. You want to leave it to your favorite nephew who cared for you. In Kentucky, he's a Class B heir. After his $1,000 exemption, he owes inheritance tax on $299,000. That's a bill of nearly $48,000, vaporized from his inheritance simply because of where he sits on the family tree. Number 3. Oregon. Our third worst state is Oregon, which has arguably the most punishing estate tax in the country for middle-class families. Why? It has the lowest exemption threshold in the United States. If your estate is worth just $1 million or more, Oregon wants its cut. Let that sink in. $1 million. In a state where home prices have gone through the roof, it's terrifyingly easy to hit that number. A modest house and a decent retirement plan are all it takes. Oregon's tax rates start at 10% and climb to 16%. So if a family inherits a $1.5 million estate, the $500,000 above the exemption is taxable. That could trigger a tax bill of up to $80,000 that has to be paid. While there's talk in Oregon about raising this limit, for now, that $1 million cliff remains a huge threat to families all over the state. Number 2. Washington. Moving to our number 2 spot, we have Washington State. Washington's estate tax has seen some big changes. As of July 1st, 2025, the state's exemption is rising to $3 million. That's a big improvement from the old $2.193 million, but here's the catch. They also jacked up the top tax rate. For estates that go over the limit, the tax rates now climb to an eye-watering 35%, for the portion of an estate over $9 million above the exemption. Think about that. Between a top federal rate of 40% and a top state rate of 35%, the government could become the single largest beneficiary of your estate. But like Rhode Island, the real trap for many Washington families is the lack of portability. A married couple can't stack their exemptions. If one spouse dies and leaves everything to the other, their $3 million exemption just disappears. It doesn't carry over. This critical flaw can cause a much bigger tax bill when the second spouse passes away. Number 1, Maryland. And now, the moment you've been waiting for. The number 1 worst state in America to die in is Maryland. Maryland proudly holds the unique and terrible title of being the only state in the nation with both an estate tax and an inheritance tax. First, the estate tax. For 2025, Maryland's exemption is $5 million per person with a top rate of 16%. But here comes the 1-2 punch. After the estate pays its tax, Maryland slaps a 10% inheritance tax on money going to certain heirs. Like Kentucky, immediate family, spouses, kids, siblings, are safe. But if you leave money to a niece, a godchild, or a best friend, they owe a 10% tax on their share. Picture this nightmare. Your Maryland estate is worth $6 million. It owes estate tax on the $1 million over the exemption, which could be around $100,000. Now, you want to leave $500,000 of the remainder to your nephew. He then has to personally write a check to Maryland for another $50,000, 10% of his share. The estate gets taxed, then the heir gets taxed again. It's a double taxation trap that makes Maryland the undisputed champion of draining family legacies. Okay, I know this all sounds pretty grim. It can feel like the deck is stacked against you, but here's the good news. You can fight back. With smart planning, you don't have to let your zip code destroy your legacy. Here are a few key strategies. First, strategic gifting. Every year, you can give a certain amount of money to anyone you want, completely tax-free. For 2025, that amount is $19,000 per person. A married couple can give $38,000 to each of their kids, grandkids, or anyone else, year after year. This can move hundreds of thousands of dollars out of your taxable estate over time. Second, use trusts. Trusts are financial super tools. A popular one is the Irrevocable Life Insurance Trust, or ILIT. Basically, you create a trust. The trust buys a life insurance policy on you, and when you die, the payout goes to the trust. Bottom line, the trust owns the policy, not you, so the payout is generally not considered part of your estate and isn't hit by estate taxes. This gives your heirs tax-free cash to pay any taxes without having to sell the family home or business. Third, the nuclear option, move. If you're retired and have the flexibility, moving to a state with no death taxes is the only foolproof way to avoid them. States like Florida, Texas, and Arizona are famously popular for exactly this reason. But a word of warning, you have to really move. Don't think you can just get a P.O. box in Phoenix and call it a day. States like Oregon will hunt you down. You need to change your driver's license, voter registration, and truly cut ties with your old high-tax state to prove you've left for good. This is complicated stuff, and the right plan for you depends on your money, your family, and your state. Navigating this maze of tax codes and trusts is absolutely not a DIY project. The single most important thing you can do after watching this is to get professional advice. Sit down with a qualified financial advisor or an experienced estate planning attorney. They can build a custom plan to shield your assets and make sure your life's work goes to your loved ones, not the tax man. You've worked too hard to let a line on a map decide your family's future. By understanding the threats and taking action now, you can protect your legacy and provide for your family exactly the way you want to. So now you know the states that could quietly drain your family's inheritance. Don't let your legacy slip away. Hit that like button if this opened your eyes. Subscribe for more hidden financial truths.